and welcome our guest. There we are.
Hi. Hi,
Excellent.
everybody.
Let's just turn you up a little bit. You're just a bit quiet on mine. It's not you, Snorbuckle, it's me. There we are. I'm sure people will tell us if there's anything wrong on their end.
You're
Um,
turning up your own microphone as well.
yes, I mean, I gotta give the people what they want. To be honest, they control this channel.
Mm.
But hello, welcome on in. How are you doing? How's
I'm
your
doing
week
all
been?
right. Oh, I think I've had a good week. Yeah, it's been all right. Watching a lot of films from a
For
certain
today,
actor, and that's been pleasurable. So I've been enjoying that. It's been a good week.
in many ways than one, I'm sure. But yes, so this week I'm speaking with Snorbuckle, as you can see, who is on screen, who is also a streamer. I mean, I've seen you play Dark Souls. I'm going to say
D-
Demon Souls, possibly as well, maybe?
D- Demon Souls. I streamed way back in
Way
January,
back.
but I've been working through the Souls series, and I have 2 bosses left. Um, but I will be playing a wider variety of games after that because
Oh,
I don't just want to be a Souls streamer.
maybe something a little bit more light-hearted, maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, excellent. So do you want to just give sort of people that may not know who you are a little bit of intro, I guess more about like your film taste, so sort of the sort of genres of film that you sort of lean towards or directors that you particularly like, just a little bit of a taster, really.
sure. So, as far as films go, I never really got like into film until I was in my 20s. I think, like, obviously, I watched films, but as far as understanding really what was going on, noticing actors, noticing performances, how it's all put together,
Mm.
wasn't really a thing until I got into my 20s and I started to pay attention to it a little bit more. And so I've never had any of like that formal education in film that I believe you have. So just sitting down to talk about film for an hour about a specific topic, I don't think is ever anything that I've done before. I got my film education
Mm.
from YouTube video essays, really. Um, but as far as genres go, I'm sort of all over the place. Um, Not so much. I, I do kind of like a bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
I really like a good film, like a good, well-crafted film that I can appreciate with great performances. Um, but I also really enjoy watching, your enjoyable trash, like big action films.
Yep.
Not really Michael Bay, not like that trashy, um, but more like your Mission Impossible.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
very well-made action films, and I'm sure some people would call them trash, and they're wrong. But I also really like watching a bad film that's badly made with terrible performances, because I always find it's really interesting when you watch a bad film. It helps you understand what makes a good film good
Mm.
because you see the absence of it. So, tastes from all over, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like you have to have a certain, I guess, overall understanding, of different genres and stuff. I don't get people like, oh yeah, I only watch, you know, action or I only watch rom-coms or something like. But maybe it just comes with
Sure,
like
those people
age.
exist,
Yeah, yes, I can imagine those people exist.
but you probably wouldn't be able to convince them to come onto a podcast to talk about film.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be a very different type of sort of chat, I imagine. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, no, that's interesting. It's because like when I first sort of came into your stream, I sort of somehow we immediately got onto the topic of like films, and I remember saying we had the whole conversation of like, so who's your favorite director? And it was like
Mm.
waiting, and then I was like Denis Villeneuve, and you're like, oh, same.
Yeah, Denis Villeneuve, absolutely.
And then I think it was
Uh,
like, who's your favorite actor? And it was the wait
that
again. And
was
I
the
was
that
like,
was the bonus round. Was who's the favorite actor?
yep. And then
Jake Gyllenhaal. Holy shit!
and
Are we
that's
best friends now? Well, and it's come to this.
this is what it's been building up to ever since that moment.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm excited to get into this one. Thank you very much for the follow, Iris Melia. Maybe one of your followers, possibly.
Iris Amelia.
Amelia. Wow,
Yes,
I can't read.
Iris is lovely. Welcome on in, Iris.
Hello. Before we get started, Snowbuckle, I want to show you something, but I'm just gonna have to step off camera, and I'll.
Okay. Oh, I'm excited.
Scared. Excited,
I'm
scared.
excited.
Right.
Hmm.
I will be 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
Okay. Okay.
Entertain
I'll
the
entertain
chat.
chat.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Let's guess what it could be. It surely has to be something Jake related, and I'm guessing like maybe a big bunny head would be my initial reaction. The Donnie Darko bunny head that Frank wears, a severed head. I don't know, or a oh.
I've changed. Well, I've not changed. It's gonna be backwards to you probably.
Yeah, I had to flip that. I love it.
I just would like to clarify that I did not buy myself this T-shirt. Someone bought it for me for Christmas, not me.
Mm.
And it's never seen the light of day until this moment. it's
You know what I what I really want now is I want a Mr. Jake Gyllenhaal T-shirt.
Exactly, that's what you want.
Oh
But
god.
yeah, I thought this is the perfect time to show it off, I guess. The main part of this video today is what we're going to do is I let Snorbuckle know that I wanted to do this talking about Jake Gyllenhaal, and I thought, how can we incorporate that into sort of a podcast kind of thing that people would be interested in? So basically said to them that I think we should rank our top 10 favourite performances. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be the film. I've done it on his performance in the film, not necessarily the film as a whole. You might have done it a little bit different. And I think after that, maybe we might mention some of our worst films, possibly, or as we're going along. I think there's a few.
Definitely want to talk about that.
There's a few interesting films that I've watched only recently that I hadn't actually seen until we spoke about doing this. I've seen some very shocking films as a whole during this process, which I'm sure we'll get to, and then any of the sort of like honourable mentions as well we can also talk about. So my number 10, performance-wise, is Zodiac. Snorbuckle is quiet. Or he's frozen. Who knows? Could be both. I'm going to say he's frozen. So what was the last thing you heard me say?
So I heard you say that your number 10 was Zodiac.
Yes.
And I was responding, and you were saying, "Oh, he's not saying anything. He's shocked into silence." And then I lost connection. But what I was saying was that Zodiac is not on my list.
Ooh.
Which is, I know, interesting, I suppose. But I have seen it. I didn't rewatch it as part of this sort of rewatch. But I wasn't exactly like blown away by it. I thought it was a bit long, it was a bit ponderous, and I found it a little hard to connect because, I mean, it's about the Zodiac killer. I kind of know how it ends,
Yeah,
or doesn't.
I mean,
so
it's not really a spoiler, but you know, they don't catch him.
Yeah,
they don't know who
they
it
don't
is.
catch him. So, you know, you're just watching it for the joy of film, and I just thought it was a little overlong, really. I think it's a solid film, and they do a good job with it, but I didn't feel the need to rewatch it, so I can't really say where I would put it. Didn't really stand out to me, but
Yeah.
when you want to talk about what you like about it, why you put it at number 10?
Yeah, so I mean, it's directed by David Fincher, who I think, you know, is a great director himself, and it has that sort of, he has this sort of aesthetic, you know, the sort of hidden green screen that like you wouldn't even recognize like in a lot of scenes. I think it's interesting, like the dynamic. You've got Robert Downey Jr., Mark Ruffalo, Jake Gyllenhaal, quite a good cast, really. I don't know. I think it starts really well, and I think there's really good moments. But I guess I'm looking at it from more of a performance point of view. I totally agree. Like, it is a little bit long as an overall film, and obviously the conclusion. When I was watching it, I didn't know about the Zodiac killer, so I was a bit like, oh, okay, right. So we don't know anymore. No one knows. But I think performance-wise, I think it's pretty good compared to some other films. Because some other films that I have watched of his, I think a lot of them are. I don't know. A lot of them. I was really surprised how many comedies he's done, and I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't really. I guess you could deem maybe one of the ones in my top 10 is a comedy of sorts. But yeah, I don't know if I can really put a comedic role necessarily in the top 10, maybe. Like, I enjoy those more comedic roles he does sometimes, but I don't know. Yeah, it's not his strongest. That's why it's at 10. But
Mhm.
yeah, I just like the aesthetic. I like David Fincher. I think I'm a little bit biased on that part. Um,
That's fair enough. The David Fincher films I've watched, this is one of the ones that sort of grabbed me the least. I'm generally quite a fan of his work,
mhm.
and I probably will get around to rewatching it, and I reckon I will probably enjoy it more on a rewatch.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's going to be one of those things.
Yeah,
Um,
and there's like a few little
but
hidden like Easter
yeah, I
eggs and
think
stuff.
solid.
I think you probably will enjoy it more, but again, I don't think if it's not going to be your favorite, I guess ultimately,
Mm.
which is totally valid. So yeah, do you want to go with your number 10, and we'll see if I've got it on my list.
So you were just speaking about how he's in a lot of. He does have a surprising number of comedy roles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I would say number 10 is Okja,
Okay. Okay.
which isn't really a comedy film,
Yeah.
but as far as Jake's performance in it goes,
Mm-hmm.
it's hilarious and just wacky and just so out there. So do you not have Okja on your list?
I don't. I
Okay,
don't. However,
that's
it
fair
will
enough.
be on my honorable mentions. I will say that just because it's like you said, it's so bizarre. I love the film as a whole, but it's just the character in it is like Ned Flanders, like on steroids. Like it's just wild. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I think the film as a whole. So this is Bong Joon-ho film, and this is the second film of his that I watched. And the first one I watched was Snowpiercer,
Mhm.
and people really loved Snowpiercer, and I watched it, and I thought this is a bit weird. It's kind of all over the place. Am I not getting something? And then Okja came out, and then we watched that, and again I was like, this is really tonally just what the hell is going on?
Mm.
Um, also has Paul Dano in. Just realizing there's
Yes.
such
Yeah.
a connection there. Um, it's just wild all over the place. But when I actually got around to watching Bong Joon Ho's Korean language films, uh, I I've loved the ones of those that I've seen, and I think I just don't really get along with his English language films.
Mm.
Um, but as far as Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in Okja goes, it's just so out there. It's not like he's doing stuff that no one else in the film is doing,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
whenever he's on screen, it's just what wacky stuff is he going to do now? And that and I think it actually is a really good performance of his because of the way his character, who is like a wildlife TV presenter guy, the way his entire demeanor and his voice shifts when he's not in front of the camera, the wildlife documentary
Mm.
camera, and then when he is,
Ah.
you really see that shift. And he's actually, we know Jake Gyllenhaal's a great actor, and he is actually displaying more of his great acting skills in that role than maybe the wackiness might lead you to believe. So I think that I I didn't originally have this on my list, but I was going through some clips on YouTube, and it really did remind me of how well he does
That's
that.
exactly what
So I
I
just
did.
snuck it on at the bottom there. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even notice what you've just said there. Like more of his like, even though he's probably not, doesn't even know if he's on camera, but he's got those different sort of character sort of elements of he's this character's not on TV who obviously thrives being the center of attention. But I've only seen it once, so maybe again I think
Hmm.
that deserves a
I've
rewatch.
also only seen it the once, and I'm not sure I want to do a rewatch. It was that sort of
Yeah.
weird.
I did watch clips of it again just to remind me, and he's just like wearing shorts and like it's the hat and it's on stage and it's just it's bizarre.
So flamboyant.
Yeah, it
Just the way
really
he's
is.
moving all over the place. It's when he jumps up on that stage in some public square or whatever, and he does that weird move with his hips. Like, what are you doing?
I,
It is sort of consistent when you look at this guy's performances. Is that he knows how to move
mm,
well,
the physicality.
but he also knows how to move very poorly.
Yes, all for the character, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's a solid choice though. Yeah, it was. If it was going to go on my list, it would have been on 10. So it was sort
mm,
of the teetering edge of that one. But no, that's
yeah.
interesting. Good start, definitely. Just see. I think some people have been saying stuff during that. Um, Blockaby says comedy Jake is my favourite Jake, but I think that's more about comedy than Gyllenhaal. Maybe. I've seen him in interviews, and he does have a certain knack for comedy and kookiness, which suits him for comedy. Yeah, I think, like I said, watching this, I'd say a lot of the films, almost like 50% of the ones I've seen are almost comedies. Like even like the sketches he's done. I know we've spoken
Mm,
about the John Mulaney thing that he's in. He's done SNL. He's done Amy Schumer. Like he's done loads of comedy stuff. I think he really enjoys that.
mm.
Um, this is all serving to remind me of films on my list I don't watch because I rewatch the same stuff constantly. Yeah.
Well, I
Um,
think it's nice to rewatch stuff. I find that I don't rewatch stuff that I enjoy as much as I should
mm,
because I feel like there's a list of movies on my checklist that I want to watch, so I'll go and check them off for the satisfaction of checking them off. But
yes. Yeah.
that means I don't tend to go back to the ones that I really enjoy. So
Yeah.
going back and rewatching my favorite Jake Gyllenhaal films was a treat for this because it added it to my to do list.
Mm, yeah. So, this is homework. I can add this
Mm,
to the list. Yeah,
great.
it's interesting because I didn't really rewatch any of the ones that I really like. I just watched new ones after we spoke about this.
Right.
I've not double watched anything. I don't think I have. No, I don't think I have. I've just watched completely new ones that I've never seen before. So I've seen some of these multiple times, like
Mm.
way too much. But yeah, I didn't really do rewatch on some of those. Okay, so if we move on to number 9. So number 9 for me, I've put Jarhead.
Okay, I don't have Jarhead on this
Oh,
list.
this is
It
this
was
is
going to be
already very different.
it was going to be an honourable mention.
Okay, okay. Yeah,
I
this is a
must admit.
film I didn't see for ages. I don't know why. I think I only saw it maybe 2018, something like that. I didn't know what to expect. All I knew it was some kind of war film. And then going into it, I was very, very surprised. Again, it's quite comedic considering the sort of marine, sort of corporal setting of it. And you've got Jamie Foxx in it as well, and I think a few other sort of side characters and actors. But yeah, I just, again, I haven't watched it recently, but I remember having really good experience with this one. I really enjoyed it, and I think, yeah, I just think it's another. I think there's also the sort of the physical side that Jake Gyllenhaal does bring to a lot of his other roles. Like, he's got Southpaw, he's got Nightcrawler, where he physically changes himself, and I can imagine he did the same sort of thing with this. I can't, you know,
Mm.
quote that, but I imagine he would have sort of put himself through sort of some kind of training to do this role. But yeah, I think this is probably, I guess, the most light-hearted film, if that's not giving away too much of my list, but probably the most light-hearted film on my top 10,
Looking
considering,
at mine
yeah.
now and thinking if that light-hearted. I guess I see what you mean about the comedy. It's sort of like banter.
Mm,
I don't know if I would say it's a comedy film so much as it's a macho
no,
banter film.
yeah.
Um, and it's a war film in so much as it's based around a war, but it's not about the war, as
Exactly.
many war films I suppose are not really about the war.
The good ones,
Um,
anyway.
but it is certainly not about the action. Very, very explicitly, it is
Hmm.
not about the action. A lot of it is very nicely thematically linked to these poor macho men's desire
Mm.
for action and the frustration at not being able to get it. And yeah, I think he does a great performance in this sort of a subgenre of bald, uh, macho, strong Jake performances, of which there are a couple.
Yeah, it's 2005, so this is kind of
Mm,
his sort of, I guess this is his sort of golden era, I guess, in terms of his career, because you've got, is it Brokeback Mountain a little bit
mm,
before, Zodiac 2007, yes, I think this is when he was sort of becoming a bit more of a household name. And of course, this film is directed by Sam Mendes as well. And obviously, Sam Mendes has gone on. Well, he did American Beauty, and he also
Oh
did
yes,
Sky. Not was it Skyfall or was it the last James Bond? I can't remember.
Spectre.
Spectre.
Didn't he
I think
do
so.
1917?
Yes, he did.
It's really funny. I was just saying about war films, and I was thinking in my head, well, 1917 is, I suppose, more about a war. Um,
There you
there
go.
was much more war going on in that film.
Yeah, a lot
But
more.
yeah, I hadn't
Yeah,
hadn't
definitely.
realised it was Sam Mendes. I really liked 1917 a
Interesting.
lot more than I thought I would.
I didn't really like it.
That's I could totally see why people wouldn't connect with it, but
Yeah.
for some reason it got me. I don't know if I was just in the right frame of mind, but it
Hmm.
really got me.
So what's your number 9 then, Snorbuckle?
My number 9 is Stronger.
Okay, that is on my list.
Oh, it is.
It
Okay.
is. This is the first match we've got so far. Yeah. So yeah,
We can wait until
we'll,
you get we
yeah,
get there.
yeah. We'll wait until that sort of appears then. So we've got it for both of us. So if we move on to number 8. So number 8, I've got Enemy.
It is higher on my list.
Okay, okay. So it's on your list, but higher. Okay, all right. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We'll come to it. We'll come to it.
My number 8 is Prisoners.
Prisoners.
Mm,
Prisoners is on
which
my list.
I'm guessing you might have higher.
Yes, but only by one more place.
Okay.
Okay. So should we talk
That
about
means
it
we
now?
can.
Because it's my number 7.
You're 7 and it's my 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I just rewatched Prisoners today.
Okay. This was the
While I
one you
was.
watched today.
This is the one I was watching today while I was working, and I knew that I needed to rewatch it because I know people really like it, and it's by my favorite director, Denis Villeneuve, fantastic director.
Yes.
But the first time I watched it, I think I found it so tense and unexpectedly brutal. Like I think I just pretty much wasn't expecting too much violence at all, and
Mm.
there's some upsetting stuff in there, shall we say.
Yeah.
I certainly don't want to spoil it because I think
Mm.
people should definitely watch it because it is an excellent film, but I really enjoyed it a lot more on a second round. I don't know how you feel about the potentially upsetting stuff that's in that film, or whether that bothered you.
It didn't really bother me, to be honest, in terms of I guess the sort of the physical sort of visual stuff that you sort of see, if that's what you're referring to. I mean, for me personally, it's not higher on my list because I actually think Hugh Jackman gives a better performance than Jake Gyllenhaal. And I feel like a lot of people talk about this film like, oh, Jake Gyllenhaal's great in this film. Like, he's much more of a sort of a very much sort of a bit more of a recluse character. He's very sort of more.
Yeah.
He's sort of whereas Hugh Jackman is a lot more bigger. He's a bit more.
Yeah, Jake's character, I did really notice watching it that he doesn't really have much character development.
Not
And
really, no.
sort of the bit of character development that he gets maybe feels like it comes out of nowhere.
Mm.
And then, doesn't really resolve itself. But I think that's certainly more to do with the screenplay than I think with the performance, because
Yeah.
Jake does give a very good performance in this. And the first thing that I notice immediately is Jake Gyllenhaal likes to act with his eyes.
Yes.
And he does in this film, he does a very particular blinking thing.
Yes, he does.
As though he's as though he's got something in his eyes that he's constantly trying to get out. And there is absolutely no reason for him to have added that to this performance.
No. Once you notice it, and you're like, I think you might be overdoing it a little bit.
I think I like it.
Oh, okay.
Like I admire the completely unnecessary addition. I think for some reason it does add something. Yeah, I think he does give a very good performance in this.
Yeah, I think he's very limited, like you said, in terms of the screenplay. So I think that's obviously something he's like, I'm going to go away and work on that. Like, what is like this character's backstory? Whereas, Hugh Jackman's character gets a little bit more of an arc, and we sort of see this sort of descent, shall we say, into where his character goes.
This absolutely is Hugh Jackman's film, and it's the best I've ever seen Hugh Jackman
Yeah, I think so.
in anything.
Yeah, I think it's one of
Not that
his
I've seen that many Hugh Jackman films, but this is absolutely
X-Men.
his film, and it is a little unusual to see because Jake normally plays either the leading man or one of the leading roles, or a supporting character that doesn't really appear all the way through the film.
Yeah.
So it's unusual to see him in a role where he's not in a leading role, but he appears all the way through the film. Little unusual. But I think it is a very good film with some very well done twists, very interesting story, and just great performances all around. I definitely enjoyed it more on a second watch.
I know we've already mentioned Paul Dano, and obviously they've worked together on Okja as well after this. So obviously they've like sort of struck up a relationship there. But I think like I said, performances all round from everyone. Viola Davis, everyone, even like the kids and stuff. Everyone's brilliant in this film. But yeah, for me, just Hugh Jackman is the better of the leading characters, the actors. Sorry. So for Jake, it's okay, but the film as a whole, love it. But performance-wise, I've seen better from Jake. Brilliant. So what's your number 7?
My number 7 is End of Watch.
Okay, that's on my list. Okay. In a higher position.
All right, we'll get to it then.
I think we're getting a little bit more like we're matching now, I think. We're sort of getting there. Okay. So my number 6 is Brokeback Mountain.
Okay, I've got that, but higher.
Oh my gosh, okay.
6? Interesting. Yeah, we'll get to it.
Okay.
My number 6 might feel then like a little bit of a wild card to you, because
I can make a guess at what you're going to say. It's going to be one of two films.
Okay, because I suspect you might not have this on your list, but I'm going to go with Source Code.
It was on my list, but I removed it this week.
Oh,
I removed it. Yes. Okay.
It got bumped off the bottom.
It got bumped. It would have been. I think it was about 7th or 8th as well. But yeah, it got bumped. So do tell me why it's.
So I think Source Code is a really, really fun film overall. I like a sci-fi action. I particularly like a time loop. And as far as Jake's performance goes, my description of him in this film is, if you want to see Jake Gyllenhaal yelling at strangers for an hour and a half, then Source Code is for you. Just because of the crazy situation that this character has been put in, just seeing these scenes with Jake just going up and being really rude to a random stranger is really funny in a way that I find difficult to say, really. I just it's just a romp, and I think it really shows his range. Like, that's the action there. That's the action Jake is Source Code. And it's fun, and he does great, and there are emotional moments to it as well.
Yeah. No, I think you're totally fair in it. I mean, like I said, it was on my list, and then it sort of bumped out a little bit, just because I think, from what I've not rewatched in this time, but from what I remember, it's a good action film. But in terms, I'm going to sound really pompous now, but in terms of his performance, I don't think it's his strongest. Again, just because I think it's a little bit more. Because it's probably the most action, I guess, stereotypical action sci-fi he does that's maybe a little bit more mainstream. I think a lot of people have seen this film out of his sort of list of films. It's just, I don't know if it just... I don't know.
I think that's fair. If you want to look at it from the anti-popcorn flick view, get the heck out of here. Any crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
I see your point, but I wanted to put like a crowd pleaser on there. I think he deserves credit for what he can bring to those kind of films, and it's solid. It's really solid, and I don't think anyone can look at that film and find any major flaws, particularly in his performance. I think it's just a really good. It's a good sci-fi film. What
Yeah,
can I
I
say?
mean, and the ending's pretty good. You're like, oh,
I really like the ending. With those kind of films, they can really really flub the ending, but
mm.
I think they did it really well, and it leaves you feeling good about the whole situation. So
My number 5 is Southpaw.
okay, I don't have that on my list.
Ah, interesting. Very, very interesting. So yeah, Southpaw. I guess this is up there, like I said before, in terms of his most um method acting. He
Mm,
sort of very much went. I remember seeing videos of him training and getting into sort of the physique of a boxer. And I really enjoyed this film. I'm not massively into like boxing films, sports films normally, but obviously I watched
mm,
this one just to follow his work. But I was quite surprised by this one. I think Rachel McAdams plays his wife, and I like the dynamic between those two. And his daughter's obviously quite a pivotal role in this, and 50 cents in it, very random. Uh, but
I don't remember.
yeah, he sort of plays his agent, I think it is. I think possibly something like that.
Mm,
But I just think the physicality of this film sort of sets it apart for me, and the emotional acting, I guess, for him comes from his relationship with his daughter. I'm not going to say why, but the sort of the bond between those two characters goes through like a roller coaster of emotions. So you've got that side of his performance, and then you've got, okay, I need to learn the choreography of how to box and get fit for this role. So I think it's a pretty good a modern boxing film, and has a very
mm.
good soundtrack as well. So that's my
Yeah,
that's my piece on that film.
fair enough. I have seen it, and I think maybe just because, as you say, it's a boxing film, it's a sporting film, not really kind of my cup of
Mm,
tea, and it sort of falls within that. For me, it sort of falls within that box of films that he's done, which very solid, very good,
mm-hmm.
clearly very well made, um, good performances all round. But it just didn't hook me. I don't think, left or right. It just didn't hook me. Um,
Oh God.
so sorry. Um, yeah, it was all right. But I don't again I don't really feel the need to rewatch it. I haven't even made any notes about it specifically because sadly it just didn't stick out to me.
That's
But
totally
I
fair.
could certainly see what you were saying about the training that he had to do for it, training to be a boxer and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Yeah.
He clearly certainly put a lot into it,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and good for him.
Well done. You got paid to
But
change your body. Well done, you.
but yeah, the film sadly just didn't connect with me. So
That's totally fair. That's a totally fair point. So what is your number 5 then?
my number 5 is Wildlife.
Ooh, that's not on my list. Not on
I
my
I would
list.
guess the reason that it's not on your list is because he's not in a lot of the film.
Yeah, I'd say it's more about Carrie Mulligan and the sun, isn't it?
Oh, the
Really,
sun. It's about the sun.
it's Paul
It
Dano, isn't it?
really is.
Basically.
Yeah, it's because it's directed by Paul Dano,
Yeah.
and he does a fantastic job. Um, but I think that Wildlife is the best film that Jake is in.
As
That's
an
my
overall and as an
as an
overall film.
overall. If someone asks me what do you think is the best film that Jake Gyllenhaal is in, I would say Wildlife. But it can't be higher because he's not really in the film for a lot of it, and that's sort of you know a narrative thread that's very
Mm,
important for the film that he's not in for a lot of it. But
yes.
when he is there, some really really good scenes. Just a
Mm,
fantastic scene, I think, with his son in a diner or in a bar or something after
yeah.
he re-enters the film, and just his performance in that scene alone gave me chills.
Hmm.
And in fact, the final scene of the film gave me chills. I'm getting chills just thinking about this
Wow.
film. It was really, really, really good. I really like it. It's so beautifully shot. The soundtrack is just really interesting. I'm trying to find my notes on it. And yeah, the actor that they found to be the kid,
Mm.
um, absolutely amazing. And there are so many beautiful shots that this is Paul Dano. I'm just bigging up Paul Dano on this list. So many beautiful shots where there's some action going off screen, some dialogue happening off screen, but the frame is just focused on this kid and this poor kid's reaction to this stuck in the middle between his parents,
Yes. Yeah.
and it's heartbreaking and just beautiful. Really love Wildlife. But yeah, as far as Jake's performance goes, I think it is a very good performance. It's a shame there's not more of it.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I watched this film weirdly, I think last year in the first lockdown. I think it was put on Netflix possibly, and that's when I watched it. I knew of it, hadn't sort of got round to it.
Mhm.
I love Carrie Mulligan. I think she's a great actress as well. She's done some great films, especially of recent. And like you said, I think of when he's in it, he's great, but I don't think he's enough. Yeah, like you said, you sort of highlighted he's not really in it enough for me to sort of validate his performance. But it's a good film, and I like the sort of I like the exploration of like this sort of I think is it 1950s America? Would you say
Yeah,
50s?
I think it's 50s.
50s, yeah, and that sort of I guess sort of traditional dynamic between like a husband and a wife and that sort of
Mhm.
role, and I guess yeah, and I think there's a great scene between Carey Mulligan and Jake Gyllenhaal sort of in the sort of the kitchen, and just it felt almost like a play. I think at times a little bit, it wasn't
Mm.
necessarily complex in like the set designs or anything like that, but it allowed you to concentrate on the performances because it was a little bit simpler. But yeah, no, I enjoyed the film as a whole when I
Mm.
saw it. But yeah, like I said, more Jake. So my number 4 is Donnie Darko.
Snap.
I don't know what you win. You win something.
Yeah,
Wow.
Donnie Darko. What a film.
Yes. Uh, you, you start, Snorbuckle, you start.
I don't have any notes on this. I just knew that it needed to be high on the list because Donnie Darko is the first film that I watched Jake Gyllenhaal in. I had it on DVD when I was a teenager. Um, when did it come out? 2001.
2001? Yeah.
So I'll have been 12 or 13 when it came out. Yeah, I had it on DVD and I watched it quite a lot. And I remember watching it a lot at sleepovers. All my friends had seen it, and so yeah, it's sort of indelibly connected to my teenage years. And I hadn't really rewatched it as an adult until a couple of years ago,
Hmm.
and I watched it and I thought, yeah, it's still a good solid film, and there's lots of things to like about it. It is still a bit strange and disconnected, but that sort of is the point of it. Um, and Jake's, I don't really know the the right word to describe it, but just his a little unhinged
Mm.
approach, and the way he can snap at people, and the way he acts along with his sister, um,
His actual
just
sister as well.
yeah, his actual sister. Um, just fantastic. I'm finding it difficult to talk about it without thinking of my teenage years. So if you want to describe how you feel about this film.
Well, this film, I guess I saw it quite late. I think I saw it when I was at university. So this would have been first year of university. I was 2014. But I knew of this film initially because I think similar to you, maybe it must have been a couple of years later, but my mum watched this film alone downstairs and she told me she was absolutely terrified of this rabbit. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. So I stayed away from that film for a very long time. So I saw it for the first time. I don't know why, but I watched it by myself. Yeah, at university, and I first time watching it, I absolutely pooped myself just at the image of this whole sort of rabbit, sort of ghostly kind of thing. And I was like, oh, not sure about this. And then, watching it a couple of times, I actually sort of understood it and appreciate it. It's one of those films that I quite like doing it, but going away and analysing the ending, I quite like it sometimes,
Mm.
to look up sort of, okay, what does that sort of symbolism mean and stuff like that. And that is definitely with that film, I had to go and look it up. Like, there's no question about it. But yeah, I think you get a real range of performance from Jake Gyllenhaal, sort of as the sort of high school student, and then, like you said, he sort of goes off the rails, sort of this descent again, as him and this, oh god, what is the rabbit called again? I can't remember the character. Frank. The sort of the relationship between those sort of change as the film progresses, and there's that iconic shot where he's like in the street with his head like this. There's things like that, and it's iconic for a reason. I think it was a defining performance for Jake Gyllenhaal. It was a standout film again. I know you've mentioned time loops earlier with Source Code, but you've got the whole sort of time element within this film as well. Yeah, I think it's a great film, and I have heard slander about it, and I will not stand for it, to be honest.
Well, there is a director's cut. Have you seen the
I
director's
don't know
cut?
what I've seen.
Because
Not sure.
I probably should have delved slightly into the differences of these, but from what I've heard, the director's cut adds some more explicit explanation as to
Okay.
what might be going on, and sort of ruins a bit of the mystery. It adds too much that it shouldn't, and people really dislike it for that reason. And it might just be the case that Richard Kelly, the writer director, given that the director's cut made it worse, it might be the case that someone was holding him back and managed to help him make a good cult movie. Because I went on to see another film that Richard Kelly made called Southland Tales a couple of years ago. He made it just like 3 or so years after Donnie Darko,
Okay.
and it is one of those really, really bad films. It's just wild. It's all over. There's so much stuff going on. I can't even begin to describe it. That's a rabbit hole you can go down yourself. It's a whole other thing is Southland Tales, but I think Richard Kelly clearly had been held back a little bit, and I think it is to Donnie Darko's benefit that it sort of became a nice cult film.
He's made his money, I think, just from that.
Oh yeah, and such an excellent soundtrack as well. Not mentioned the soundtrack, iconic soundtrack.
I mean, what is the song? Is it the Radiohead cover, or is it that one? Is it Mad World?
Oh,
is it Radiohead's cover?
It's oh, I'm forgetting his name now. Gary Jules covered Mad World originally by Tears for Fears.
Tears for Fears, that's it. Sorry, yeah.
And it was Christmas #1.
No, I do not know that.
Did you know that? No. Yeah, that was Chris. I'm just remembering that now. Yeah, that was Christmas #1, the year that came out.
Wow.
I guess because of Donnie Darko. I'm not sure.
Must be.
It was a different time back then for Christmas #1.
Yeah, before X Factor had its influence, I imagine, on the #1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Donnie Darko it's got so many fingers into the cultural zeitgeist that it's difficult to separate from any of those things, and it just stands in my head as well. It's Donnie Darko.
Okay, so we just said #4, which was The Snap. We got both the same on that one. Yeah. So
nice.
I'm glad that happened. I mean, we've got a Snap out of 10. Excellent. Okay, so we're into top 3 now. This is it: bronze, silver, gold in terms of ranking. So my third/bronze ranking, if you want to say, is End of Watch, which I think you mentioned earlier.
Yes, that was my number 7.
Number 7. Okay, very different in positions. End of Watch. Well, again, very different tonally. I guess it's a bit more of that masculine dynamic of a police buddy cop kind of film. You have a bit of rom-com in there as well. You have those light-hearted moments, and you have those definitely a lot more darker moments towards the end of the film. Um, but this is what's his face? I can't remember his name. Who also did Suicide Squad, the original.
David Ayer.
Yeah, which is interesting because I saw this. Luckily, I saw this one first before any of his sort of films, such as Suicide Squad, afterwards, and I'm glad I did because this is a good one. Uh, yeah, I just love the dynamic between Jake Gyllenhaal. I can't remember his co-star's name. Something Pena. He's in the
Michael Pena.
Michael Pena, and then you've got Anna Kendrick as well in that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely there's moments that just feel quite, I guess, organic, and I know that for a fact. There's a moment where Jake Gyllenhaal's character and Anna Kendrick are singing in the car, and I know that they put on the song, and they just both knew the song. They just start singing, and that is just a genuine moment, and I love that, and you can just tell that is genuine on screen. So I think that must have happened at various moments throughout the film as well. I think there's good. So there's those lighter moments in the film. There's also your action, sort of car chases, your more sort of police aspects of it. And then, yeah, there's a bit more sort of drama into it. So I think it's a great film. It's one of the films, this and Prisoners is the sort of the two films I mainly recommend to people if they haven't, if they want to get into more sort of Jake Gyllenhaal films or, something a little bit different. I always sort of recommend these two. But yeah, I think it's a good film. What do you think about End of Watch?
So the reason I have it as number 7. So I would initially have thought that I was going to have it higher. But I wanted to rewatch it, and we are going to dip into this just a little bit here because all films are political. But I specifically wanted to rewatch it because since I watched it the first time, the way that I approach films about police has changed, shall we say?
Yes.
So I rewatched this a couple of days ago, and
oh no, what are you going to say?
It is very well made. It is excellently shot. I really love the style with they're recording with their own camcorders.
Yeah.
And even when they're not recording with their own camcorders, even when the camera doesn't actually exist in the scene, they tend to make it look like the camera exists in the scene. So if you're like a stickler for that kind of thing, that might bother you, but it's best just to not think about it and just enjoy the aesthetic of the way that it's shot, because it is really interesting. And yeah, I'm a sucker for films that are shot interestingly like that. But yeah, great performances all around. America Ferrera as well. You didn't mention. I think she does a particularly good job as one of the other cops. But yeah, I think the film maybe lacks a bit in the plot department, because it's more like a slice of life film for the vast majority of it, and you get you're just having these little vignettes, and then sort of the last half hour of the film or so, a few of the earlier vignettes sort of come back, and then you have like a proper plot to the film, I suppose. So I feel like maybe they could have done a better job of having more of that through line. But I think talking around like the politics of it, I think it's I think it is they are portrayed like ludicrously heroically. There are a couple of those bits that are put in just to say these are definitely the good guys, and sometimes they act unprofessional. There's a scene right at the beginning of the film where Michael Pena's character just has a fist fight with the suspect in his house. Like puts down his gear, puts his badge away, and says, "Right, we're going to deal with this man on man." And it's Jake Gyllenhaal recording it, like, "Whoa, this is crazy." And they have that fight, and a certain film could look at that and say, maybe this isn't the way these policemen should be acting. But actually, the way the film aims it is that later on, the character that this guy fought comes back, and because he earned so much, the cop earned so much respect from this guy by acting really unprofessionally with him, that later on he comes to him and warns them about something happening in the plot. So the way that the film frames it is like, as though sometimes cops have to break the rules, and it's all in the greater good. So that's really the only reason I didn't want to put it too much higher. I just felt really different watching it this time around. But as you say about the performances, just the improvisation that's going on and the genuine on-screen chemistry that you have between Jake and Mike is very, very good. And I read that before they started filming, pre-production, like they were not friends. They did
Oh,
not get
really?
on.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, it's not like they didn't like each other, but they were like, "Who the hell is this guy?"
I imagine they might have clashed because I think, well, that both they go for a lot of comedic roles. They seem both like quite comedic people, so maybe they were just quite big characters. I guess maybe, not sure.
Yeah, not sure, but David Ayer had them go on ride-alongs to sort of see how police actually did it, and months of those, you'll have a certain bond forming, and I suppose that's kind of the point. That's what is demonstrated in the film. So yeah, I think it is definitely a film that I would recommend for people who might be able to deal with some of the more upsetting themes of it.
Mm.
And there are some scenes where shouting over each other and it gets a bit much.
Yeah.
But for anyone who can deal with that, I would recommend, based on just with some content warnings, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I've not revisited it in the last sort of few years, and it'd be interesting to see how I guess the current situation with stuff going on, how that would affect my outlook. Because there's some of the films, just in general, not these sort of films, but watching them again, you're like, oh, actually, not sure with
Maybe not.
2021 vision anymore. I'm not sure this is acceptable, with what's going on. So yeah, no, it'd be interesting to see. I guess the way in which you could take certain scenes, like are they being maybe satirical about these cops not doing their job, or is it just highlighting heroes in a bad way? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I was hoping that by the end of the film there would be more of a specific message about it, but it was pretty much just heroes. They were heroes.
Yeah, well, well,
Yeah.
it's third at the minute. This list is very much flexible. It can always
Sure. Yeah,
change.
these things happen.
Yeah, cool. So what is your number 3 then?
My number 3 is Brokeback Mountain.
So that was my number 6. Yeah, cool.
Mhm.
So if you want to talk about that one first.
So, I mean, this isn't one that I rewatched, and I haven't seen it for a few years. But I cannot think of any reason on a rewatch why it could drop down. You got to give this film massive props for it sort of being a turning point in modern queer cinema. The depiction of gay romance on screen with big Hollywood production with I suppose becoming bigger name actors at the time, and other than just being probably being good representation, I'm not the person to ask. It is also just a very good, very well made film, and the performances from both Jake and Heath Ledger are just just stunning. The emotion that they have there and the chemistry that they have there, it's really touching. So yeah, I as I say, I've not rewatched it in a while, so I can't say much more about it, but it's really good.
It's really good film. Yes.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, you're saying exactly sort of the things I was thinking. I mean, again, you could say again with sort of 2021 eyes, should two, straight men be playing these sort of gay characters? Some people might, that's a whole different discussion. But
Well, if they did it now, then they wouldn't be. But
yes, yeah.
back then, it was what 16 years ago. I want to say. So like that, you didn't even have gay
Yeah.
characters.
Yes.
Never
Yeah.
mind, like openly gay leading
Mm-hmm.
actors who could then play those roles. So for 2005, pretty good. I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think it got sort of that Oscar sort of buzz as well around it, which I think sort of again sort of broadened the audiences that saw
I
it and like knew that got the name
I think it
sort of.
got best director.
Yeah, Ang
'Cause
Lee, I
it
think.
lost out to Crash for best picture, apparently.
Crash. Never even seen it. I want to watch that.
Oscar bait, apparently. I've never seen it either.
Not. I don't think it's my sort of film. Um, but yeah, no, I think it's a beautiful film, and I remember watching it and thinking I was really sort of intrigued how it was not. It's I guess it's sort of that initial. This is the situation they're in. These two men having to work together in the mountains, and then there's like they share like a weekend. I think it is essentially doing this job or a week. And then you carry on and see the rest of their lives, how they lived them, and you have to remember, I guess, the context that this is set in, and this sort of acceptance of gay people and stuff within that time. And I think supporting characters are brilliant as well. Anne Hathaway and Michelle Williams again do brilliant performances along this, and it's obviously sort of struck up a relationship because obviously Jake and Anne did Love and Other Drugs, which is not mention that, but that's a fun film. And then Heath and Michelle got married and had kids in real life, so obviously it was quite a close sort of set, I imagine. And yeah, I think it's just you just class it as a romantic film. I think it's beautiful. It's the setting's beautiful, the direction's beautiful. I think it's a great film. But as to why I hadn't put it lower or higher rather, I'm not too sure. I don't know. I guess it's just it's not as striking as Donnie Darko. Do you know what I mean? Donnie Darko just seemed a bit more like standout. Southpaw seemed a little bit more standout to me. But I do enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. It's just I guess I don't know. It's just not as high. Yeah,
Fair enough.
but yeah, it's not one that I've rewatched. But it's I guess, I'm just going to rewatch all of these films again that I've not watched recently, besides the new
Yeah.
ones.
Extra credit. I'm certainly going to go and rewatch some of these films for extra credit.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I want that gold star for doing it. Right, excellent. So top two. So my number two is Stronger.
Wow, that's interesting. That's very
Yeah,
high.
yeah. You put it quite low, I think, didn't you?
I put it at number 9.
Oh wow. Okay, almost pole opposites. Okay. Right. I guess the reason that I've put it at number two, this is the only new one that I've watched that I hadn't seen in my top 10. As in prior to this conversation. I knew what it was about, and I knew I didn't see it at the time. I had it on Blu-ray for 2 years, and I've not watched it. And I knew what it was about. I knew Jake was doing all this press with sort of the guy who it was about. So obviously I knew that he survived and everything like this. But I was just absolutely blown away by the physicality again, once by Jake Gyllenhaal, the performance, to act in a way that, because I know that he sort of wore. This isn't really spoilers, but obviously it's all about the Boston sort of marathon bombing that happened, and it follows a character who lost both his legs during that, and that's who Jake plays. And it's about his relationship with his sort of on and off girlfriend and how that can sort of, I guess, bring them together. And through that, I guess you get this really heartbreaking sort of emotional moments, as well as the physical, like I was saying. And even though Jake Gyllenhaal obviously has his legs, to play it as though there's nothing below his knee, and to like physically like lift himself in and out the bath and like in his chair, I just thought was amazing. And the emotional scenes between him and his sort of partner in the film, I thought was absolutely amazing. Again, like I couldn't believe I hadn't seen this film sooner. I think it's one of his. Yeah, it's real range. You have those sort of moments where he's shouting in someone's face, and it's those quiet moments where you can read his eyes. You can tell what he's thinking by not saying anything. So I think the range in this film for me is just really great. I guess the film, does it have rewatchability? Maybe not, but I think the performance alone puts it really high for me in my rankings. So
I think
yeah.
they told me I should have put it higher.
Oh, have I convinced you?
just listening to that. Oh yeah, that is really good. Yeah, he did put a lot into that. Yes, this is very much a performance film, isn't
Hmm.
it? The film is essentially just Jake's performance.
Yeah.
The film around it, as you say, I'm not really sure that it would hold up to a rewatch, really. But
Mm.
just scenes, you might want to watch again. A particular
Yeah.
scene where he's, when he's trapped outside a building
Yes,
and he's
that's what I'm thinking
on
of
the
in the
floor,
car. Yeah, that bit.
bashing his hands against the door, trying to get in. And I
Yeah.
think I saw a clip from an interview where Jake said that he was filming that scene for just like half an hour, and they just kept the camera rolling on him
Wow.
just to get the desperation of like
Yeah.
he's been abandoned. Like,
Gosh.
but he said, thankfully, he said that that it clearly wasn't a bad experience for him, and
Yeah.
he enjoyed doing that. But yeah, it is essentially a good old Jakey boy performance film. Is
Hmm.
this? But I think I probably had it lower because I feel that is pretty. It might be a bit harsh to say, but it's pretty much the main thing that the film has going for it.
Mm.
Because other than that, again, I feel it falls into that category of Jake Gyllenhaal films that are clearly very well made and they're very well put together, but they sadly just didn't connect with me. And I'm like, yes, you've made a good film, well
Mm.
done. But yeah, maybe I should have put it higher. I think you convinced me.
Yes. Yes, I've done my job. Yeah, I thought what is her face? Is it Miranda Richardson, who plays his mum? I thought she was absolutely amazing. She's English, and as soon as she came on the screen, I turned to my mum and I said, "That's Rita Skeeter from Harry Potter." I knew instantly before I even looked up. I was like, "That's Rita Skeeter," and I thought she was brilliant in it as well. And I don't know if you've seen this film, but have you seen the film The Fighter?
I haven't, no.
I would highly. It's a boxing film again, but again, it's not really about boxing. Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg, Amy Adams as well. Again, I think it had a bit of Oscar buzz around it. But it's about the sort of the family dynamic, and it really reminded me of that film. And I was like, if it was done a little bit better, I thought like, this film could be Oscar nominated, possibly. If you looked at his performance alone and you compare it, with some other things, I think if the film was overall better, I think it should have been on there. Yeah. But I love it, and I was very intrigued to find out that it was directed by David Gordon Green, who did the recent Halloween films. And what else did he do? Oh, he did another film that I watched. But it's a really bizarre genre. He's done like Pineapple Express and a lot of like Seth Rogen films, and then does a film like this, and I'm like, oh, okay, right.
Let's try to branch out.
Very different, but it works. It works for me. But yeah, very unusual.
Like George Miller doing Babe Pig in the City, right?
Oh god.
When I think of directors' mismatched projects, that's what I think of.
That's really weird because we spoke about Babe today at work. Don't ask why, but yeah, Babe. What a film. Anyway, I digress. What is your number 2, Snorbuckle?
So I am going to venture a guess and say that this is your number 1, and it's Nightcrawler.
It is my number 1. Spoilers.
Yes, my number 2 is Nightcrawler.
Okay. Okay. I can't work out what your number 1 is yet. Oh, no. I know. Looking at the list, I know. Okay, carry on.
So yeah, Nightcrawler. It's fantastic. It's an excellent film. This is one that I rewatched
Hmm.
specifically just can I put it right up there? Absolutely yes. Nightcrawler. I get my notes for this because I'm sure I wrote a lot.
An essay.
Um,
Just
yeah. No, it actually turns out that I didn't write much for this because I was too busy watching it because it's too engrossing.
there you go.
Um,
It's done its job.
yeah, Nightcrawler I think it would be my recommendation to anyone who asks what is a great Jake Gyllenhaal film to watch, if I know that their tastes
Mm.
uh, are too wacky.
Yeah.
But like they appreciate a good film, watch Nightcrawler. He's so good in it. And some people say that he doesn't blink in this film, which is a lie because he blinks in the first scene. But he is again he is again doing that very much eye acting that
Yeah.
he
Opposite
does.
to Prisoners, where he's blinking quite a lot. He's very much
Mhm.
like eyes are open.
It's like see the
He's
whites of his eyes at all
mm,
times. Very, very
yes.
creepy. Um, yeah, and he plays this just deliciously sociopathic character whose main goal is his own success,
Hmm.
and he will step on anyone in the way, not in a cruel way, but just in a very matter of fact method that is somewhat predictable, really, but is really fascinating to watch. And the way his character uses the people around him and the way he interacts with them is absolutely fascinating. I really love the dynamic between him and Riz Ahmed's character, who, who
Yeah.
who he employed later on, and he's constantly giving this business advice to this employee of his, which is fascinating because he's giving this guy advice for success, while also just screwing him over and just exploiting him, because he's allowing him to do that. Um, and the performance Jake gives through all this is absolutely fascinating. There was only one weird thing that I noticed rewatching this film is that sometimes the soundtrack feels a little out of place. I don't
Oh
know if you noticed watching it, but
no.
there's that particular scene where Jake's character comes didn't even explain the plot. He's going around. He's essentially chasing police scanner stuff, so he can come with a video camera and he can get the footage, be the first on the scene to get footage and sell to these TV stations. So there's a particular scene where he's the first to a car crash, even before the police are there, and he's the first on the scene. So he is doing things to the scene that he should not be doing.
Mm.
But the music that's playing during that scene just was like weirdly uh, uplifting. It sort of reminded me of the Truman Show a little bit. I don't know. It was weird. But on a rewatch, just pay attention to it. That's the
Okay.
only bad thing I can film is the music was a bit off at times. But other than that, fantastic. Highly recommend to everyone, really. What are your thoughts?
Y- I mean, ditto, definitely. Yeah, well, it's number one for me on my list. I think in terms of an overall, I mean, his performance, I think the overall film is excellent. I think supporting cast, this is the first time I saw Riz Ahmed in anything. Didn't know he was actually British. So when I heard him talk, I was like, hang on a second. I thought you were American, but
Have
I think it's
you
just great.
seen Four Lions?
I have seen it afterwards. Yeah, I saw it
Okay.
afterwards. Yeah, but I was like, I didn't know who he was, and I know he was in like Rogue One or some kind of Star Wars.
Mm.
I don't know which
He's
one.
doing well.
He's done well, especially after this film. I think he did pretty well. But yes, I think, like you said, this is another film that you could definitely recommend if you know someone's taste and they're a bit more. They like maybe thrillers, sort of psychological thrillers, something like that. I think this is a good sort of stepping stone. I think into that sort of world. But I love this film, and I think coming from a sort of video background, I can sort of appreciate it a little bit more in certain ways. And I always say, like when I'm filming, because that's what I do for a job, I always say steady hands, steady hands. Like that's what he always says to like Riz Ahmed's character. If I'm doing like handheld, I just hear that in my head. I'm like, oh god, what would this character say to me if he saw how shaky it was? So I think it's an all rounder in my opinion. Some of these films in my top 10, have strong individual performances or like good scenes, good moments, but as a whole, I love this film so much. And considering it is a directorial debut from Dan Gilroy, you're like he's hit the nail on the head.
Realize that.
Yes, I mean he then goes on to make a not so good film with Jake Gyllenhaal, which I will mention once we finish this list. Which yeah,
I'm not sure I know what that is.
Oh, well, it's complete opposite ends. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. I think it's a glorious film, and if you haven't seen it, you need to, after this, go and watch it. And you won't be disappointed. Everyone that I've recommended it to loves it. I've never heard anything bad about it. Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah.
I think it's solid.
Just very, very solid all the way through. Everyone should be very proud.
It is. Let's go watch weird, sort of skinny, coyote-like Jake Gyllenhaal. You won't be disappointed.
With his eyes and his nodding.
His eyes.
That meme. That meme's from it, isn't it?
Yeah. And the sunglasses that he puts on at the end looks so cool. I love it. But yes, so that brings us to your number one in Snorbuckle. I'm going to take a guess before you say it, because I think you might have said it, but you've not said it, if that makes sense. When I said it on my list, I'm going to hazard a guess that your number one is Enemy?
It is.
Yes.
My number one Jake performance, I believe, is Enemy, which I suspected wasn't going to be your number one. I suspect it wouldn't be a lot of people's number one. But I rewatched this for part of this, for this whole homework, and because I really needed to make sure it measured up if I'm giving it the number one spot.
Yes, of course.
And Enemy is 2 for 1. 2 for 1 on Jake. Like we just said in chat.
Exactly.
You get 2 Jake Gyllenhaal performances for the price of 1. Thus, if you are rating Jake Gyllenhaal performances, why wouldn't it be number 1? Both of them are great. So the film itself, directed by Denis Villeneuve,
as we know and love,
indeed, very, very stylish. Some very, very odd choices all the way through. And there's a weird disconnect sometimes between the audio of the scene, what's being shown, that gives you this really weird atmosphere, and you're left thinking by the end, did that really happen? What really happened? Really not sure watching the film. I've watched it twice now, and I still don't know what the hell I watched, but in a good way, in a really good way. And Jake's performance as like this really, really meek guy who doesn't have what he wants and doesn't really know what to do and is confused by something that he finds out. And then you have another performance where he's more of the macho bro type Jake, with the slick back hair and the leather jacket, riding the motorbike. And there are a couple of scenes where he's just acting with himself, and just the tension is just fantastic. The way, I think when I was watching those scenes in particular, I wasn't even thinking, oh, he's having to act with himself right now, because it just seemed so well meshed together.
Yeah.
I just don't know how he does it, but you can see the physical difference between them. And yeah, it's a great performance, and thematically, as I say, I don't really know what's going on, but it does sort of explicitly state it's themed. It's about control, and it's about things happening twice and twins like that. And Pluckerby actually really interestingly pointed out that there is a lady who is pregnant in this film, and uh, she's supposed to be 6 months pregnant. And
Hmm.
we said, she looks very heavily pregnant for 6 months. And I said, not if it's twins. But I don't think that's ever, that's not mentioned in the
No,
film, I
I don't
don't
think
think.
that's explicitly said, but you can
But,
assume.
there's stuff there, and I really love it. This is the Jake Gyllenhaal film I would recommend to someone who I know has very filmy taste. If you
Yes.
know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, they've
Like,
they've
if they've
seen
already
some
seen
weird stuff.
Nightcrawler, even if they haven't seen Nightcrawler, like, you like weird stuff, watch Enemy.
Mm,
You liked Arrival? Definitely watch Enemy.
yes. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
I
totally agree with
really
you.
like
I think it's obviously I put it a lot higher, lower in my list. Sorry. I should have thought of the double 2 for 1, Jake, but I didn't think of that.
it.
You I think you win for that one. But yeah, it's what I was saying earlier in terms of I think it was Donnie Darko in terms of like what did I just watch? I need to go and Google that. Why is there a thing in the corner of the room? What does that mean? I
Mm,
need to go look at what that thing means, and then you start to pick it apart and look at the posters of the film, and you think, oh, okay, there's a few sort of things here. And I think, oh no, I must have watched Prisoners before because that was 2012, so I feel like I did watch that roughly when that came out, and then I must have seen Enemy after. But it felt very because he's sort of French Canadian. It felt the most sort of, I guess, European sort of film that I've seen him do. Still, you know,
mm,
in the English sort of language with a lot of sort of French accompanying actors. But it just tonally, visually, it has this sort of weird sepia yellow tinge to it, which I think adds to
mm.
that sort of uncertainty, sort of control, sci-fi, all of these sort of aspects. Yeah, it's a wacky one. As a whole film, it's up there with Donnie Darko, I'd say, in terms of themes.
Mm.
So it's definitely for the more avid sort of film watcher that's likes to watch a bit more obscure sort of things. But I do enjoy it. I just I don't know. Again, it's more it's I guess because his performance isn't necessarily as large as some of his other films mentioned. It's a bit again, well, one of the character leads is a little bit more sort of reserved,
Mhm.
more of the reaction rather than um, acting as such. But
Yeah, I suppose. It's sort of more playing within the bounds of the film than sort
mm,
of trying to act his way through it.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
I think the direction is a bit sort of bit more
It's
sort of
more
tighter.
subdued.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he's been a bit more controlled, maybe a little bit more in this one. No
It's
pun
got a tight
intended.
control on it.
Oh yeah, I think Denis Villeneuve is just like okay, we're just gonna this is it. Like probably a little less wiggle room on this one.
Mhm.
So I hope they do a third film together. To be honest,
Oh, that would be great.
I don't know what kind of film I want from that,
Get him a
but
role in the second Dune, assuming
yeah,
they can make.
yeah, I think that could be good. I don't think there's not been no one else in the actors. No, just trying to think of any of the actors that he's worked with before. Amy Adams, because then they've worked together on Nocturnal
Mm,
Animals, which we haven't mentioned.
yeah.
There's an opportunity there, I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's we've gone through our top 10 lists.
There we go.
Wow, and I mean we've had some like very different ones. Some that we've both not had. We had a snap at 4 with Donnie Darko.
Mhm.
But otherwise, I think we did say the same sort of films and then just different orders.
Yep.
But obviously, they're all great films because it has this wonderful actor in which we both love and appreciate. Um, but I think what we should do now, Snorbuckle, is we should maybe talk about just a few of our least favourite films that we might have watched uh,
Absolutely, we should.
in this time.
What
Um,
we've suffered in preparation for
yes,
this.
yes. I don't know how you want to approach this. I mean,
Uh,
I have 2 bad films that I watched recently for this, not knowing they were necessarily bad. Well, actually, I did
Mhm.
know one of them was bad, and then one that I've seen before, and it's horrible. But what do you think are some of Jake's worst performances?
Well, that's interesting. You phrase it as worst performances and not like worst films.
Okay, let's go films as a whole. Actually, I think
Because
films as a whole. I'm gonna say.
I think he gives some even in the bad films that he's in. By God, he's doing his best.
Oh
So
God.
I feel like I kind of want to go chronologically.
Okay.
So
I
I
don't know
don't
what
know.
my
I feel that
chronological
makes
is.
sense. But I guess we can start with Bubble Boy.
Oh God.
We got to talk about it.
Oh God. I paid money to watch that yesterday, a
Oh,
Wednesday.
oh, I'm
Oh
so
God.
sorry.
Yeah, first time watching it. I didn't have much, high expectations hearing the concept of it. Um, I thought it started out really well. I will say that there was a
Hmm.
bit of satire. It felt a bit Tim Burton-esque, a bit Edward Scissorhands-esque, and then after sort of like the inciting incident, he has this love interest, and she's like, I'm gonna go get married. I mean, the days just went really quickly. I had no idea of the concept of time in this film. And when he decides to leave the house, oh, I have to say that Bubble Boy basically is Jake Gyllenhaal's character. He's been, he's had this life where he's not sort of let any sort of germs touch him. He lives in a bubble world, even within his house, so he's never seen the light of day. His skin's never touched the air, basically. And he goes on this adventure across, I don't know what state he's in, but he has to go to Niagara Falls to find the girl that he loves. And when he goes on this adventure, oh my goodness, um, the racism that appears in this film, some really inappropriate language about like women's bodies and stuff. I was like, I don't know. There was some really good moments in it, really funny moments. I will say that, but I just kept. There's this bit like I was just cringing like more and more as like this, the film went on like the second half. I was like, oh gosh, and to say this is the same year as Donnie Darko, oh my goodness.
It's almost unbelievable. It
I,
really
I,
is.
I, I it's over to you, Snorbuckle. I don't think I can say.
So I think if we can salvage something from this film, I'd say it is fascinating that it came out the same year as Donnie Darko, and you compare Jake's performances in these
Mm,
films, you have to give him credit for the initial display of his range of talents. Let's say that. I Jake does not come out blameless from this film.
no, 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 of
Um,
course not.
there is one particular scene which I could have done with not seeing, which is when Jake uh, repeats the phrase $500 in an
Yes,
increasingly racist accent
yes,
that I could have done without seeing.
yes.
Um, but you say the film started good. I think that's being generous. I think it went from bad to offensive and aggressively offensive for the rest of the film as soon as it turned.
Oh god.
As soon as he sort of got himself flung onto a train, I think, and then
Yes.
there
Oh,
was, and then as
yeah.
soon as um, the freak show turned up, people don't watch this film.
No, no. This is.
Don't watch this film,
We're not
please.
encouraging you to watch this at all. Do not give
Do
them
not.
your
We
money like I did unknowingly.
we did it so you don't have to.
Exactly.
Um, yes, I wrote quite a lot about this because I was a little furious.
Oh
The
god.
soundtrack. Okay, I'll
Oh,
give props to the
oh,
soundtrack.
so 2000s, wasn't it? Didn't they play the
Yeah,
same song
Blink
like
One
three
Eight Two.
times?
Yeah, Offspring, all that kind of stuff. It was making me feel like a teenager again.
Yeah.
Um, but those films should have been left back
Mm.
in those years, and thankfully they have been.
God.
It is sort of a microcosm of all that was terrible about comedy in that
Mm,
era. And
yeah.
I actually looked through some of the IMDb reviews
Okay.
for this because there are people who love this film.
It's got a cult
Um,
following, has it?
it apparently is considered a cult film now. Yes.
Gosh.
And you've got various people in there defending it because I know it's not PC, but that's why I like it. Um,
Oh.
a- and there was actually quite an insightful comment, I will say, from someone who liked this film.
Okay.
If we can take away from this film that someone might have liked some of it, is someone I didn't catch this while I was watching it because I was too busy being horrendously offended. But someone pointed out that he meets various groups of people along the way, and sort of the notion of the film is that all of these groups that he meets are actually within their own bubble. They just don't know about it.
Wow.
And their bubbles are more restricting of their freedoms than his is, because he's projecting himself out there into the world and he's going and doing it anyway. So if we want to leave that on a higher note.
Yeah. What else is next on your sort of chronological list then of the worst films, shall we say, as a whole then for Jake?
So in 2002, there
2002.
was The Good Girl.
Oh, I've not seen this.
Good.
Do let me know.
So The Good Girl, having come out in 2002, apparently sort of being billed as like a comedy, I guess, because it has Jennifer Aniston in,
Okay.
and it sort of is a romantic plot in a way.
Oh yeah.
But it is not a comedy. I suppose it's more of a drama, and it's just kind of bleak in a way. It's really
Mm.
strange. So Jake and Jennifer Aniston's character, they both work in like a larger convenience store as cashiers, and he plays a kid who is very into Catcher in the Rye, and basically thinks he's Holden Caulfield. And I haven't read Catcher in the Rye, so I
No,
don't
I
really
haven't
have
either.
the right context for that. But from my understanding, is Holden Caulfield is essentially the pinnacle of teenage angst,
Right.
and is sort of really pathetic about it. And Jake, I suppose, does do a good performance of being like this really pathetic, needy teenager who's really angsty about everything and just wants to run away with this one lady who just paid him attention for some reason. But Jennifer Aniston is essentially decides to cheat on her husband with Jake's character, and then there is an awful scene of sexual coercion with another character who finds out about that and blackmails her into doing stuff, and it was viscerally upsetting.
Mm.
Um, Especially when I went in thinking Jake Gyllenhaal and Jennifer Aniston. This can't be that bad, right? It was bad. It was bad. I really, I was upset by this film.
Mm.
Uh, which is a shame because it has great people in it. Like John C. Reilly's in it,
Oh yeah.
who's always great. They later on went to do the Sisters Brothers together,
Mm-hmm.
him and Jake. Zoe Deschanel is in it, and she is essentially the only funny part of this film.
Oh
Like
wow.
the bits with her character in are essentially, comedy is happening now. This character is interacting in a funny way with a customer in the store. Now you will laugh. Now over to the bleak, horrible drama where Jennifer Aniston is doing horrible things and maybe trying to poison people. I don't know.
Wow. Okay.
No, 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 disagree. Hard disagree with that film. So let's talk about Accidental Love.
How did you know?
I That's the only other one on my
Oh
list that I really wanted
gosh.
to talk about, was Accidental Love.
Oh.
Which I sat down and watched it with Pluckabee. I wasn't expecting it to be good, right?
No, no, yeah,
And
of course, yeah. Didn't expect it
it's
either.
not good, but this is a bad film that I really enjoyed watching. I really enjoyed watching it, and I'm interested to hear whether you enjoyed the experience at all, or whether it was just painful for you.
Well, I guess a little bit like Bubble Boy. Like literally, I think maybe the first act of this film, I loved like the comedy. I loved the sort of, again, I think there's a bit of satire in there. I just loved the whole sort of set. I didn't know when it was set. I don't know what year this was set because she's like a roller disco, like a roller waitress. I'm like, is this
Uh,
the 50s?
oh no,
Is
no,
this recent?
that was explicitly set up at the beginning, but the whole framing of the opening of the film was to suggest that it's taking place in the 50s, and all the cars were all like retro cars and that.
Yeah.
But then it pans over to this sign that's like retro car classic festival, and
I
the
didn't notice that.
the owner of the 50s style diner says, "Oh, I love this weekend. It's great for business." That
Wow.
was it.
Okay, shows I didn't really pay attention to that. I'm just getting up my a little bit of because I wrote a few words for this one. Bear with me 2 seconds. But yeah, no, I loved the opening of this film. I thought it was absolutely bizarre. It set up the tone. I think I love James Marsden as well. I think he's a great actor. Be it whatever film you may have seen him in, Hairspray, Hop, Sonic,
Mm.
yeah, real range. I thought this was great, and I love how he just stays in his cop uniform the whole film. I love that. Um,
I didn't even clock that.
yeah, I was like, that's an easy costume for him. I love the silliness. I think I liked it up until the point where she goes to meet Jake's character, and then I think I sort of lost it a little bit. Um,
I
oh,
think the film had already lost the plot way before that
oh
point,
God,
to
I've
be
just
honest.
remembered the scene. Uh, in his
The
office,
scene.
the legs flying around like
Oh,
360.
that was really fun.
Oh, it's utter madness. It was just completely bizarre. It lost me a little bit when it got a bit political. I was like, what is Jake's
Mm.
character's ability in this? And there was the supporting cast that followed Jessica Biel's character around. Like, was he a priest or some kind of religious person? Sort of
Yes, he was a pastor.
a pastor.
So he wanted to help because they all had healthcare related needs.
Yes,
So his particular healthcare related needs was in, the little performance
the
pill that he
groin
took
sort of area.
that
Yes.
lasted for longer than 4 hours. Um, yeah, I don't really know if we need to say more about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it was clearly supposed to be a satire,
Yeah.
and I'll give them credit that it is actually clear that it is supposed to be a satire, but it is very poorly put together as a satire.
Mm,
The music in particular, I think, is attempting to be satirical, but ends up being indistinguishable from just bad.
yeah.
It tries to be not just a satire of a rom-com, but also of like a political drama,
Hmm.
especially
Yeah.
like the final scene at the end. Um, and the fact that they used in the soundtrack like what must be ironic, a record scratch
Oh
when
yeah.
the main character, whatever her name was, mentions healthcare.
Alice. That's her
And
name.
it's like healthcare record scratch, and they were playing off the idea that you just can't talk about healthcare in American politics,
Mm,
and certain parts of that satire throughout the film, and the attack ads that their opponents took out against the Girl Scouts who
oh
became
yes.
a force in the film somehow, were it's clearly satire, and it was there were a lot of funny lines as
Yeah.
well, I thought, that were just so out there that I just couldn't help laugh. But it was very badly meshed together.
Yeah, I could see the potential in it. Like I said, I think it started really strong, and I could see what it was trying to do, but I think it needed. I think maybe the script needed a little bit, just a bit of a clearer sort of direction, maybe. But I think it's David O. Russell, and David O. Russell did American Hustle. What else did he do? Was it not Silver Linings? He did another Jennifer Lawrence one. Yeah, it was Silver Linings Playbook. Sorry,
No.
and he did do the Fighter, which I mentioned earlier, apparently. Um, again, a real range of films that he's done. But I think, oh god, I've just seen Kirstie Alley's name, and I forgot that she was in this film. And does like the operation. That's excellent. Yeah, I think there's clear direction, there's clear style. The performances are good, I guess. I think there's the comedic timing is good from the actors. I just think the story in itself needed a little bit tightening, I think, towards the end of it. I don't think it's as bad as, Bubble Boy, at least.
Oh no, I would rather rewatch this film than a number of solid but otherwise not terribly remarkable Jake Gyllenhaal films, like October Sky, which we haven't even mentioned.
Yeah,
I
did
think
watch that one.
I would rather rewatch this than October Sky, and that's nothing against October Sky.
Yeah,
It's just
it's got the rewatchability, I think. As October Sky, it's a true story. Okay, cool. Yeah,
90s drama, solid performances. Well done, everybody.
Yeah. Tick.
See you later. But yeah, Accidental Love was a watching experience that I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yes.
Of a bad film.
I think I would watch it again, but with other people, just to be like, look at this.
Observe the madness.
And just watch their faces like. Right, so the only other thing that I just wanted to sort of briefly touch upon before we sort of wrap up is if you had any sort of just honourable mentions that didn't really make it into your top 10 that you sort of generally enjoyed, be it the film as a whole or Jake's performance. Just if you wanted to run through any that you had.
I think I have two. The first of all being Jake's performance as a seminal performance, we could say, as Mr. Music in John Mulaney's Sack Lunch Bunch. I think that's what it is. You can watch if you all haven't seen it, you can watch the entire sketch. It's like 8 minutes long. It's on YouTube.
Yeah,
and it's he very much brings the same energy as he does to Okja.
Yes, that's it.
Where it's just the wildest you will
and a
see
mustache
Jake.
again. A mustache.
The mustache, and he's singing. He's all singing, all dancing, and we know that Jake Gyllenhaal can actually dance properly
and sing
because
and
he can sing because there is a small dance scene in End of Watch where he's really throwing some shapes on the dance floor. But as Mr. Music, he's just moving out of time and all sorts of weird movements. And then his singing, whatever accent he's putting on, and he's yelling at children, and he's getting overly frustrated that he can't make sound because while he claims that music is everywhere, he's failing to provide the evidence. And he really brings that struggle that I feel that we all occasionally have when we know something to be true about the world, but you feel like a bit of a Cassandra. Maybe you can't really express that to the people around you and bring them to your side. So I think we can all take something from that.
Oh gosh, I'm glad you said there's an 8-minute moment on YouTube because I watched the whole thing, knowing that he was in it somewhere, and I was like, "Where's Jake? Where is he?" The last bloody scene. I was like, "For God's sake!"
I liked it though. We watched it as the whole special, but I just like John Mulaney anyway. So
yeah, I like John Mulaney, but I just thought the whole. I didn't. From what I remember, I don't think I enjoyed it that much. And then when Jake came on the screen, I was like, "This is the best bit. This is the funnest bit. I love this bit."
It was the best bit. Yeah.
I think that's a great honourable mention. I didn't even think about things like that. I mean, that weren't. I mean, on the list, I did put things that weren't. I realised how many music videos that Jake's in. He's in,
I watched a couple of those.
He's in one with.
He gives some good performances in them.
Yeah, it was in one with Jamie Foxx where he's just kind of in the background. You have to really spot him. There's
Mhm.
one where he's with Beyonce and Jay-Z. I think there's a couple of actors in that one.
I don't think I saw that one.
And
There's one where he's the main character and he's like a serial killer or something like that.
I can't remember which other one was. And then he's done loads of perfume ads, which he's in one right now on the TV. I was like, hang on,
Hmm.
what's he doing? But yes,
I was actually in my initial list I had Mr. Music as number 10 on my
no,
list
you
of
didn't.
performances. I did, but after watching the Okja clip, because I sort of matched them up in my head. And maybe he's on screen about as much in Okja
Probably,
as he is
yeah.
in this,
I would say so.
as he is in that scene. But
Oh, God.
it's the same energy, and
I can't believe
he
that
is
nearly
really
made your
funny in
top
it.
10. Oh my God.
It did.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh God.
Again, his range though, you got to show off the range.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic actor, if that's not clear to anyone watching.
Yeah, if you haven't taken that away from today, I mean, some of the film choices maybe aren't great in terms of like the actual story and the direction, but performances, range, you can't fault him really. Right, so I think we should wrap it up there, to be honest.
Yeah, we probably
Um,
should.
but yes, thank you very much for joining me, Snorbuckle. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Have you?
I very much have. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was great, and I really enjoyed the homework process as well. Gave me a great excuse to watch more of this wonderful actor's films. So thank you so much.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I can just give you homework just generally, just weekly, if you'd like me to.
I'll take a pass on that for now,
Okay.
but I'll bear it in mind.
That's fine.